Justice Krishna Iyer, an activist judge. He was born on November 15th, 1914 at Vaidyanathapura near Palakkad in Kerala. And he started his legal career in 1937 under his own father, who was a leading criminal lawyer of those days, V.V. Rama Iyer. And Krishna Iyer initially tried his luck in politics. He was elected as an MLA to the then Madras Assembly. And he was appointed also as a minister in the EMS Namboodiripad government in Kerala subsequently. But his passion to law brought him to legal profession. And after practicing, he was elevated as a judge of the Kerala High Court in 1968, which he resigned because his position in the seniority list of the High Court advocates was such that he will not reach the Supreme Court. Read the book Unspeakable Anecdotes by V.R. Krishna Iyer himself, a small book. In that book, at the beginning only, he writes, somebody comes and talks to him and asks, see, you resign this and go to Delhi and join Law Commission of India. And from Law Commission of India, you can go to the Supreme Court. Otherwise, from here, you cannot reach the Supreme Court. So that's why he resigns, in his own words. In Unspeakable Anecdotes, he has written very clearly. He resigns, then goes to Law Commission of India, works there, and from there, then he was elevated to the Honorable Supreme Court in 1973. And he has rendered service in that capacity for over a period of more than 7 years. And in this period, he has written more than 400 leading judgments. And a person of that ability and caliber, with such innovative thinking, analytical mind, he was a person on a mission of serving the cause of social justice, serving the cause of human rights, and serving the cause of jurisprudence and law. He has authored more than 105 books. Forget the innumerable number of articles he has written to various journals and periodicals, including newspapers. And for that reason, there was no alternative but to decorate him with Padma Vibhushan. So we have Padma Vibhushan Justice V.R. Krishna Iyer, who was on the Supreme Court. When you peruse through the judgments of Justice V.R. Krishna Iyer, you will make out that each judgment is studded with bold ideas, which are fearlessly and boldly expressed. As you have diamonds in the golden ornaments, you have bold ideas in the judgments of the Honorable Judge, Justice V.R. Krishna Iyer. And all these bold ideas have one aim, and the aim is to uphold the human rights of ordinary people. Human rights of ordinary people. He was more concerned with ordinary people, the common man. We can say he was concerned with we, the people of this country. And he was concerned even with the plight of those people who are detained, suspects who are detained. And he was also concerned about the human rights of those people who are incarcerated in the prisons. Okay? So, such a human being, that's why it is stated, he was a shining star in the galaxy of judges. The living legend, Fali Nariman, please read his autobiography, Before Memory Fades. It is a wonderful book. And pardon me if I keep on giving references to the books. I am a student of law, I keep on reading. Read this book, Before Memory Fades. Also read his another small book, Indian Legal System, Can It Be Saved? And one more book, State of the Nations. And a book that was published in 2019, God Save the Honorable Supreme Court. And in 2020, two books he has published on arbitration series, Living in Harmony. A series of arbitration books he is bringing out, two books. Sometimes I feel so happy the way Fali Nariman writes. It entices me, attracts me to wait for his next book and read the moment it is published. And I am reading the second book in the arbitration series right now. And in this autobiography, Fali Nariman makes reference to two great judges. He gives the examples of two great judges such as Vivian Bose, three in fact, Vivian Bose, S.R. Das and P.B. Gajendra Gadkar. And later he mentioned that there are only two pathfinders. He says, I can name two pathfinders. One is Justice K. Subbarao and another is Justice V.R. Krishna Iyer. And Fali Nariman, not an ordinary person, says these two people influenced creative judicial thinking and they lighted new, difficult and different paths, the paths which subsequently others followed. So that is the great judge we have in V.R. Krishna Iyer. Justice Subbarao was known for his contribution in another field, and Justice Krishna Iyer is known for his contribution in the field of social justice. And he became one of the very famous judges of the Honorable Supreme Court. And for this fame, the reason, one and only reason is activism. And so wonderful, his activism increased after his retirement in 1990. He championed the causes of common people. And remember, at the age of 99, he sat on a dharna demanding that there should be a cancer institute in Kochi. See, for a public cause, a man at 99 sits in a dharna demanding an hospital for Kochi. So, such a noble person, such a wonderful person we had in Honorable Justice V.R. Krishna Iyer. And there can be no greater compliment given to Honorable Justice Krishna Iyer than the compliment that is showered on him by the former Chief Justice of India, Justice M.N. Venkatachalaya. He said, the range of Krishna Iyer's mind was that of Aristotle. The range of Krishna Iyer's mind was that of Aristotle. Law, literature, philosophy, justice, everything. So he equates, Justice M.N. Venkatachalaya equates Justice Krishna Iyer to Aristotle. About a judge, it is stated how a judge should be. Okay. Because we have a divine opinion about judge. We consider judge as a presiding deity or prophet in the temple of justice. How a judge should be, it is stated, he must have the wisdom of Solomon, the moral vision of Isaiah, the analytical power of Socrates, the intellectual activity of Aristotle, the humanity of Lincoln and Gandhi, and impartiality of the Almighty. These are the qualities that are expected of a judge, and it is stated, measured by these yardsticks or expectations, every judge we consider will be falling short of something, some disappointment will be there. But Justice Krishna Iyer, it is understood, meets all these requirements. What a judge he was when presiding in the Supreme Court. What was his approach to the Constitution? What were his views on the Constitution? He has written, a constitution is the document of founding faiths of a nation. So, what an expression. It is the documentation of founding faith of a nation and the fundamental directions for their fulfillment. So much so, an organic, it is not a dead document, it is a living document. So much so, an organic, not pedantic approach to interpretation must guide the judicial process. The healing art of harmonious construction, not the tempting game of hair splitting, promotes the rhythm of rule of law. This is the expression in Fateh Chand versus Union of India. So what he says is, it is the founding faith of the nation which contains fundamental directions as to how we can fulfill these founding faiths, that of establishing a welfare state, a sovereign democratic welfare state. And what are the roots? They are there in the Constitution. They respond to the changing needs of the society. He further says, the old articles of supreme lex meet new challenges of life. The old legal pillars suffer new stresses. So we have to adopt the law and develop its latent capabilities in novel situations or to be encountered. So whenever the modern society presents new challenges, these old principles are to be interpreted to meet the new challenges. That is the approach. That was the approach of the Honorable Justice to the document, sacred document, that is the Constitution. Some of his landmark judgments, you are all students of law, you know well about all these things, but despite they bear repetition. See, he banned routine handcuffing of prisoners. Unnecessarily, prisoners should not be handcuffed. And whenever they are to be handcuffed, the authorities should record reasons. And his decision in Shamsher Singh's case, which interpreted the powers of the cabinet vis-a-vis that of the president, earned him place among renowned legal scholars of international reputation like Earl Warren, the former Chief Justice of the American Supreme Court, and Lord Denning, the person who was the longest serving law lord in the House of Lords. See, Justice Krishna Iyer is arranged in the lineup with Earl Warren and Lord Denning. That is the stature of Justice Krishna Iyer. See, there will be testing times in the life of a judge. Mrs. Indira Gandhi was the Prime Minister of India, and her election was set aside by the Allahabad High Court on grounds of electoral malpractice. And the Allahabad High Court set aside her election. It declared her election to be void. And this matter comes up before the Supreme Court during vacation. Justice Krishna Iyer was the judge. And none other than Nani Palkhiwala was the advocate for Srimati Gandhi. He appeared and presented arguments before Justice Krishna Iyer. And Justice Krishna Iyer has written somewhere about this presentation of Palkhiwala. He says the presentation of Palkhiwala was uniquely becoming. His submissions were lucid and luminous. He did not stretch the arguments, he did not create the argument. He spoke only that which was apt for the situation, which the situation demanded. Such a wonderful presentation of Palkhiwala before Justice Krishna Iyer in Srimati Indira Gandhi's case. And here, Krishna Iyer was to decide as to whether he will give a stay on the order of the Allahabad High Court, whether it should be a general stay or whether it should be a conditional stay. Remember, it is a case involving the sitting Prime Minister of the country. And Palkhiwala, in his submissions, made it very clear that the whole nation was solidly behind her. And there will be momentous consequences, tremendous consequences, disastrous consequences to the country if anything less than the suspension of the Allahabad High Court order was done. He said there will be rioting in the country, there will be disasters. Despite that, Justice Krishna Iyer made an interim order not giving the then Prime Minister of India unconditional stay. He did not grant unconditional stay. And whatever conditional stay he granted, he has written in his memoirs, Justice Krishna Iyer has written, he states, because Palkhiwala came and made that presentation, he granted that stay in such general terms. Otherwise, he would not have granted. Such was the performance of Palkhiwala and such was the decision of the Honorable Judge, Justice V.R. Krishna Iyer. At this juncture, I recommend you another book. Please make it a point to read this book, written by M.V. Kamath, Palkhiwala, A Life. Palkhiwala, A Life, written by M.V. Kamath. Such a wonderful biography of Nani Palkhiwala. I tell you, if you do not read this, you have missed something in this life. You have to please. And when I met M.V. Kamath in Udupi, in one of the functions in the Vaikunta Baliga Law College, I touched his feet and I thanked him for writing such a wonderful book. Then he held my hands and in a very mellow voice said, "Thank you very much, Professor. Otherwise, where are the people who will read books nowadays?" So that was so pathetic. It was so wonderful, so nice to thank me because I had read that book. I read that book for my own benefit. And it is such a wonderfully written book, I tell you, you have to read. And when you read books like this, Advani's My Country, My Life, and Kamath's Palkhiwala, A Life, then Andhyarujana's Keshavananda Bharati's case. Andhyarujana was assisting Palkhiwala when he argued Keshavananda's case. Read this book, Keshavananda Bharati by Andhyarujana. Therein, you will come to know certain of the things which are not reported. There was an attempt by another bench of 13 judges to reopen Keshavananda Bharati's case. That was thwarted again by making 2 days argument by Palkhiwala and there was no alternative but to dissolve that bench of 13 judges, which was constituted by the then Chief Justice A.N. Ray. That is a different story. So he did not grant a general stay order. He granted only a conditional stay order. Okay, and this decision brought him laurels and also brickbats, bouquets and brickbats. Some people appreciated, some people criticized. H.M. Shirvai, that great author of constitutional law, you have to read about H.M. Shirvai. It is there in Sudesh Pai's book. This is another great jewel India has seen. H.M. Shirvai, because all of us are students of law, I want to tell you, he has written a will that his book should not be edited by anyone. After his death, his book should not be edited by anyone. Maybe he was scared of people like me who will come and edit his book in such a reckless manner. So he has written a will that his book should not be edited by anyone. That is a great H.M. Shirvai. And he was a very, very critical person and a noted constitutional law lawyer. And he writes like this about this judgment. The Supreme Court moved towards its finest hour after Justice Krishna Iyer rejected Srimati Gandhi's application for an unconditional stay that changed the history of the nation. So this decision of Justice Krishna Iyer changed the history of the nation, and that's why we have to remember and we have to pay rich tributes to the late Honorable Justice V.R. Krishna Iyer. Okay, so why, like Lord Denning of England and like Justice Douglas of US Supreme Court, Justice Krishna Iyer has been championing the causes of the underdog, that little common man, common man. Daridra Narayana is the expression used by Justice Krishna Iyer in several places. And his tries was to secure this little man justice, social, economic, and political. And in the view of Justice Krishna Iyer, the scales of justice must be even. The court should render even-handed justice. The citadels of justice, say in this Honorable, God save the Honorable Supreme Court, by Fali Nariman, at the beginning, he makes an observation, he gives a caption. The citadel can fall only from within. The citadel can fall only from within. Great institutions will crumble from within if they are not manned by appropriate persons. But at the same time, he writes, these great constitutional institutions will have the agility and ability to withstand the onslaught by some of the sub-minimum occupants of those offices. Sometimes institutions withstand. Okay, so he says, irrespective of whether the case is between rich and poor, whether it is between citizen and the state, courts should maintain even-handed justice. The scales must be kept even. That's why whenever the state appealed against the compensation orders of the lower courts in accident cases, Justice Krishna Iyer was getting infuriated. Instead of concentrating on diligent driving, road safety, saving lives, when the victims are awarded compensation, you come in appeal like a cantankerous litigant. Shame on you. Yes, upheld the cause of justice by sustaining compensation awarded to the victims of accidents. Remember, he was one of the persons who was involved in deciding this case of E.P. Rayappa versus Tamil Nadu, wherein new doctrine of equality was brought in. Justice Krishna Iyer, we all know for his language. He is known for his language, poetic language, rhythmic language, and what expressions, what word power. We have to sit with a dictionary by the side to understand him. He uses Sanskrit words, he uses French words, Latin words, Greek words, quotes from Greek mythology, Indian mythology. He quotes of the rivers, of the mountains, everything, like Lord Denning. Lord Denning is known for his simple writing, and Justice Krishna Iyer is known for his intricate writing and concrete writing. That is the contrast. Lord Denning's judgment, anyone can read without touching a dictionary. But to read Justice Krishna Iyer, you require strong metal. It is not that simple, unless you are endowed with that thunderous language, wherein you can avoid consulting dictionaries. So, in Dabholkar's case, when he writes about the professions, he has written like this: bar is not a private guild like that of bakers, butchers, and candlestick makers. Bar is not a private guild like that of bakers, butchers, and candlestick makers, rhythmically. In the same manner, about equality, he writes, equality is a dynamic concept with many aspects and dimensions, and it cannot be cribbed, cabined, and confined within the traditional and doctrinaire limits. Its sworn enemy is arbitrariness. Equality belongs to the world of rule of law, and arbitrariness belongs to the world of capricious monarchs. So they brought in new dimension of equality in E.P. Rayappa versus Tamil Nadu. That is the contribution of Justice Krishna Iyer, and because of this decision, the jurisprudence of equality in the subsequent years is completely different. And one important decision which people usually, unfortunately, we do not go deep into the study of case laws. We do not read the original judgments, and it is my sincere appeal to the students here. Make it a point to read original judgments in your library. The reporters are there. Go pick up original judgments and read. And now soft copies, Supreme Court website, soft copies you get. I tell you, you are really fortunate to be born in this digital era, wherein you have the privilege of accessing these materials on a daily basis. The judgment is delivered. The next day you get the soft copy of the judgment. The problem is there are no readers. If you read, you are on the top of the world. I am referring to State of Kerala versus N.M. Thomas. From Kerala High Court, it went in appeal to the Supreme Court. Came before the Honorable Justice V.R. Krishna Iyer. That was about reservation. Till N.M. Thomas, the earlier cases, Joshi, Ramadas, and others, Devadas, not Ramadas, Devadas. The interpretation was 16.4 is an exception to 16.1. Equality of opportunity in matters relating to public employment, 16.1. There shall not be discrimination on grounds of 1, 2, 3, 4. 16.2. Okay. State can make reservations. 16.4. 16.4 till N.M. Thomas was decided was considered as an exception to 16.1. Because it is an exception to 16.1, it cannot exceed 50%. Because if it exceeds 50%, exception will become a general rule and general rule will become exception. That's why right from M.R. Balaji it was stated the reservation should not exceed 50% because 16.4 was considered as an exception to 16.1. And another problem arises here. When discrimination on the basis of caste is prohibited by 16.1 and 16.2, how there can be reservation for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes? You take the list of scheduled castes, what are their castes? Different castes are listed there. Take the list of scheduled tribes, different castes are listed there. So when discrimination on the basis of caste is prohibited, how there can be discrimination on the basis of caste in 16.4? So if caste is a caste, there was no alternative but to say 16.4 is an exception to 16.1. This was the understanding of the scheme of Article 16 till N.M. Thomas was decided. And the same questions came again before the Supreme Court in N.M. Thomas, wherein the prime question involved was whether scheduled castes and scheduled tribes are castes. When you read 16.4, it makes reference to classes who are not adequately represented in the services of the state. Now the question is whether caste is a caste or a class. Till now, the understanding was that caste is a caste. Scheduled caste is a caste. But now, the Supreme Court says, scheduled castes, all those people listed in the scheduled castes are a class. They are a class. So scheduled castes are a class because of their sharing of the commonalities with backward classes. Then the Supreme Court goes on to say 16.4 is not an exception to 16.1. 16.4 is a specific application of the mandate that is contained in 16.1 and also 14. Read Professor Ishwar Bhatt's Fundamental Rights book, Relationship between Fundamental Rights, Interrelationship between Fundamental Rights. Read this particular portion of interrelationship between 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 and 29 class 2. It makes a very wonderful, fascinating presentation. So a new dimension was added to this provision of reservation. And from that point onwards, reservation started exceeding 50%. Tamil Nadu went up to 69%. Karnataka went up to 72%. Veritable things happened, and ultimately the case of Indira Sawhney versus Union of India and subsequent 4 constitutional amendments and the ultimate decision of M. Nagaraja and others, you are all aware of this, and I am not going to dwell upon that because that is not the cup of tea prescribed by Professor Vasudev for today's lecture. Another important decision in which Justice Krishna Iyer has laid down path-breaking interpretation is Maneka Gandhi versus Union of India. So he picks up the threads from the earlier case of R.C. Cooper versus Union of India, bank nationalization case, and culminates it in Maneka Gandhi versus Union of India. And here they interpreted this expression, the procedure established by law, to mean a procedure that is fair, a procedure that is not arbitrary, a procedure that is not capricious. That was the interpretation that was given to this expression, procedure established by law. And herein, Justice Krishna Iyer has nursed the renaissance, resurrection of substantive due process as the new interpretation of Article 21. And here, the due process rights include right to speedy trial, right to free legal aid, right to bail, at least one appeal, okay, and all these things. So it became the horizon of various other forms of rights. And all those rights which are not available to non-citizens under 19 were read into the liberty of Article 21 through this decision of Maneka Gandhi versus Union of India. Remember, when we speak of Maneka Gandhi, we should treat this judgment with utmost respect, because this judgment has put India on a totally different plane, which was not contemplated by the constitution makers. All of you know Sir Benegal Narasimha Rao, Sir B.N. Rao, the constitutional advisor to Constituent Assembly. There is article about B.N. Rao also in Sudesh Pai's book. B.N. Rao was tipped to become Chief Justice of Kolkata High Court. And that way he would have become the first Chief Justice of the independent India. When the British government had asked him to take up this position of the Justice in Kolkata High Court, Chief Justice of Kolkata High Court, the letter goes from Constituent Assembly requesting his help in the constitution making. And therein he has written a letter to the British government, which is reproduced in this book. He says, in the life of a person, sometimes he will be at crossroads. He has to make a choice. And the people of my country believe that I have some experience and I can be of some use in the making of the Constitution. Thank you very much for your offer. I go this way. I want to join my countrymen and help my countrymen in putting a Constitution in place. So that is Sir B.N. Rao. Okay, so he went to America, met Justice Frankfurter, and Frankfurter advised him not to adopt this due process clause in the Constitution, because the due process clause of 5th and 14th Amendment of the American Constitution was abused during the period of New Deal, and America had suffered. But because of that reason, our constitution makers did not use that expression, due process of law. The expression in American Constitution is like this: life, liberty, and property cannot be deprived except according to due process of law. So that was changed, and in our Constitution they have written, no person shall be deprived of life and personal liberty except according to procedure established by law. And this was brought back through this decision of the Supreme Court, Justice Krishna Iyer in Maneka Gandhi versus Union of India. See, why we have to treat this judgment with utmost care and caution is, it has its own long-time ramifications. It is stated to be an iconoclastic decision. It demolished that icon of procedure established by law and installed the due process of law in the place of procedure established by law. For this, the court first relied upon the weak ground of bank nationalization case. Second, the Supreme Court ignored that prefix personal that was going with liberty. This qualification, personal, was ignored deliberately, and the decision was given. Third, this is couched in negative language. Article 20, 21, 22. These cannot include the freedoms that are conferred on citizens under Article 19, which are not available to non-citizens. By this interpretation, they will be made available. So the rights of Article 19 will be made available to non-citizens under 21. That is the third. Fourth reason why we should be very cautious about this decision is that this interpretation seriously collides with the unambiguous intention of the framers of the Constitution, who preferred procedure established by law in the place of due process of law. And because of this, the judges will get the power to quash any law passed by the parliament using the substantive due process doctrine. So, a law made by a democratically elected parliament can be struck down by a non-democratic, undemocratic body, that is some judges. So for this we should be careful. And this Article 21, this interpretation of Article 21 will reduce Article 22 Class 1 to a nullity. For all these reasons, we have to appreciate how Justice Krishna Iyer navigated this interpretation and nursed it, which has added many, many dimensions to the expression, life and personal liberty. So many things are read into Article 21 by way of interpretation by the subsequent Supreme Courts. That's why Chief Justice A.S. Anand was prompted to refer to Justice Krishna Iyer as Bhishma Pitamaha. Okay, when he retired from the Apex Court in 1980, he was referred to as Bhishma Pitamaha. So he has fashioned new instruments, new techniques and tools like public interest litigation, liberalization of locus standi, epistolary jurisdiction, that is treating letters as writ petitions and giving remedies, and prison reforms, children homes. There is no area which is not left untouched by Honorable Justice V.R. Krishna Iyer. The sweep is very, very immense, as you all know. To conclude, I quote what Fali Nariman has said about Justice V.R. Krishna Iyer. Fali Nariman says, when Krishna Iyer speaks, the nation listens. When Krishna Iyer speaks, the nation listens. What a great judge he was. When he spoke, the nation listens. And the voice that spoke to this country faded 5 years back, when he was in his 100th year. When he was in his 100th year. There is a duty, fundamental duty on every one of us to be excellent in our chosen fields. I am so happy that Brother Vasu is not retired. One should not retire. One should continue serving in whatever capacity. When Justice Krishna Iyer could sit on a protest at the age of 99 demanding a cancer hospital, in whatever place we have all the reasons to live actively. We have all the reasons to participate in altruistic, other regarding public good activities. There is no alternative. As long as we are alive, we should be active, we should be kicking. That is the leaf we have to take from the Honorable Judge Justice Krishna Iyer. Not an exaggeration. For our 10 batches, not all the students, some students from over 10 batches from University Law College, Dharwad, we are going to Krishna Iyer's space every year. Every year they will go. Few students, they will join together. They will go to Justice Krishna Iyer, meet him, take his blessings. And when Justice Krishna Iyer became one with the God, all these boys and girls posted the pictures which they had taken along with the Honorable Judge on the Facebook and other social media. See, it was a sort of pilgrimage for people in the University College of Law to go and meet take the blessings of Honorable Justice Krishna Iyer. One should be privileged to read about Justice Krishna Iyer. One should be privileged to talk about Justice Krishna Iyer.